Shalom. I am Rabbi Michael Panitz, speaking to you from the pulpit of Temple Israel in Norfolk, Virginia. I'm speaking to you on Israel's Independence Day, and so today I'll be addressing a birthday wish for Israel, that peace may come someday. A birthday wish for Israel. I think of Israel as a second homeland, or in some ways of thinking even a first homeland. Israel has not known one day of peace in its 73 years of existence. I don't think that an Israeli or a non-Israeli lover of the state of Israel could ever forget that. And yet, so perniciously brainwashing is the force of routine that many people do indeed forget that Israel is constantly targeted for attack. There are non-state terrorist groups who never stop their murderous efforts. Many in the world fail to take them seriously because they do not match the power of the state of Israel. But they are powerful enough to take an ongoing toll of Israelis. The day before Israel's Independence Day, Yom HaAtzmaut, is known as Yom HaZikaron, Israel's Memorial Day. It is a day devoted to remembering both soldiers and civilians victims of terror. The number of the slain is at nearly 24,000, such a large number for a country as small as Israel. That includes 43 who died just in the past year of injuries, mostly to terror. There are also sovereign states still sworn to the destruction of the state of Israel. We are at risk of overlooking this critically important fact because of the flurry of peacemaking last year. Indeed, it is gratifying that a brace of Arab states is now formally at peace with Israel, and we rejoice for that. But we should remember that the states who have recently joined the Fellowship of Shalom are not those that historically were ever at the forefront of attacking the Jewish state. Of all the states that remain committed to Israel's destruction, the most dangerous today is Iran. In the 4 decades since its Iranian Islamic Revolution of 1979, replacing the Shah with an Ayatollah, Iran has remained continuously focused on the destruction of Israel. Moreover, despite its geographical distance from the borders of Israel, it has found ways to take the offensive by arming militias and other extremist groups on Israel's borders. The leaders of Iran, for their part, never stop calling for, predicting, and committing themselves to Israel's actual destruction. They even have a timeline that they have publicized with a countdown clock. They aim to see the state of Israel no more by the year 1420 on the Persian calendar, meaning 20 years from right now. We Americans often suffer from myopia, looking at news from other cultures. We're apt to think that Iran is somehow the victim of Israeli aggression going after its nuclear development program. Let's discredit that canard right now. There are different nuances within the Islamic world. The 2 major sects are the Sunni and the Shiite. Iran is a Shiite country. Integral to the Shiite worldview is an ideology of permanent struggle against the part of the world it deems to be unbelievers. As part of this ideology, Jews are singled out with particular vindictiveness. Historically, the Shiite country of Persia was the site of the most pervasive petty apartheid or Jim Crow type of persecution of Jews in the medieval Arab world. Jews were required to remain indoors during the rain because they were held to be impure, quote unquote, and the rain would wash their impurity into the general environment. Jews were not allowed to touch a vegetable if they went to market, but they had to accept whatever rotten vegetable the vendor deigned to sell them. After an experiment of modernization in the 20th century, Iran had its Iranian Islamic Revolution of 1979. The religious leader of that revolution, the Ayatollah Khomeini, gave a new twist to the old doctrine of jihad, of violence against unbelievers, by creating the momentum for a modern Islamic state devoted to endless war against those who differ from its theology. Under him, Iran has become a state devoted to violence and to uncompromising intolerance. And this direction that he set continued after his death. In 2014, before the Iranian-European-American nuclear pact, the Ayatollah Khomeini's successor, the Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, called for the destruction of Israel, stating that, his words, the barbaric Jewish state has no cure but to be annihilated. After the ratification of that deal in 2015, Israel did not receive even the slightest benefit of moderation of Iranian calls for its destruction. In September 2015, Khamenei said, "You, Zionist regime, will not see 25 years from today. By Allah's favor and grace, nothing called the Zionist regime will exist by 25 years from now." Khamenei's rhetoric has been picked up by Iran's military leaders. In 2018, speaking on Iran's Army Day, which happens to coincide with Israel's Independence Day, Brigadier General Qiumars Haidari, the commander of Iranian ground forces, said that the date has already been set for the destruction of Israel. In 2019, Major General Hossein Salami, the commander of Iran's Revolutionary Guards, said that destroying arch-rival Israel has become a, quote, achievable goal thanks to his country's technological advances. And he said, "This sinister regime must be wiped off the map, and this is no longer a dream, but an achievable goal." In 2020, echoing Nazi propaganda, Khamenei used the expression "the final solution" to describe his plans for the capture of Jerusalem by anti-Zionist forces. And at the beginning of this year, 2021, members of the Iranian parliament presented a 16-point plan for the annihilation of Israel in the next 20 years. It should be clear that the Iranian obsession with Israel's destruction is not a response to Israel's upsetting its nuclear program. Going nuclear is a way for Iran to actualize the nightmare of violence that it craves. Israel is trying to prevent Iran from acquiring the means to carry out its explicit and oft-repeated threats. But against all that backdrop of murder and threat and violence, Israelis remain a society devoted to making life better. Israeli medical and technological advances are at the forefront of the good things made available to society in recent years. Israelis do not dream of wiping out Iran or any other people. They dream of shalom. Let's dream that dream with them, even as we help them to defend themselves. Happy birthday, Israel. Many happy returns. And may we be privileged to celebrate a birthday in which you will know peace, in which you will know shalom.